Now, Aadhaar for some is actually social security, for social security purposes. Its birth is on the foundation of national security. It is not, its birth is not on social security purposes. Its birth is primarily on national security purposes, and that's primarily very important to, it's of course turned out to be important for pension, scholarship, etc., but it is also equally, the original idea was born with a national security idea in mind, to clean up Bangladeshis, to clean up other kind of migrants who would have come into India from certain religions. That's about. So that's an ideological struggle. Now it has come, NRC has come after that. Now it has come as a very handy issue for BJP to sort of use all over India. Second, economic front. First is ideological front. I think second is the economic front. In the economic front, I think I'll just few seconds I need to spend on just to get to that point, a historical view on this economics and BJP, or economics and Janasangh. BJP, RSS, Janasangh, they never had an economic ideology. If you look at Golwalkar, all those kind of fellows, if you will actually see, they will just say Indian economic policy should be in some form in line with India's cultural values. That's all they say. They don't say anything more than that ever. Then comes Deen Dayal Upadhyay's Integral Humanism and those kinds of texts in 1965, where he actually writes a few things. He mentions, he argues against Nehru's planning process. He is against Muslims, Christians, and communists. So basically, actually, every kinds of Soviet-inspired policies like planning is they are against. They are against Nehru also. Nehru also used planning as an instrument, so they are against it. This kind of then. There are serious right-wing elements within the RSS at that point of time. Excellent example is Balraj Madhok. If you may remember that when Indira Gandhi nationalized banks in 1969, two people went to the Supreme Court to argue against nationalization. One was Minu Masani, of course right-winger, well-known right-winger, but the second was Balraj Madhok, an RSS leader and a very close friend of Vajpayee. And this shows that there was a very clear right-wing economic element within RSS itself at that time itself. Then comes 1980 when the BJP is formed. They put, today is October 2, Gandhian socialism as their economic ideology. So nobody knows what that is. It was never defined. What is Gandhian socialism? Nobody knows. So the usefulness of it is that you can define either way. Right? Anybody can define it in any way, and sort of you can include everyone in that anything in that definition. Then comes slowly 1990, 91, Berlin Wall falls, Soviet Union falls, India's economic liberalization comes. RSS is very happy, primarily because Soviet Union is dead, planning is dead, and number two, liberalization has come, Nehruvian planning has been rejected. So there are two enemies have been defeated at one time. Then comes at the same time, while at the same time they say this, they do not quite have a very clear line on what India's liberalization must be or must not be. So Swadeshi Jagran Manch is formed around this time, 93, 94. Then internal debates happen within them. This debate is continuing when Atal Bihari Vajpayee comes to power in 96, 97. That government, however, is totally right-wing in its ideology. It sells off India's public sector enterprises. It opens up India's trade. It opens up India's...
Arun Shourie was one of them.
Arun Shourie was...
now our hero.
not my hero. So Arun Shourie is an excellent example, selling off hotels and so on at very low price. That government adopts an ideology which is completely right-wing in its economics. You see a little bit of Swadeshi Jagran Manch noise there, but nothing much happens. Then 2004 happens. 2004, they fight on a Shining India platform. They lose badly, and Congress comes to power. I'm sort of cutting a long story short. One actually would feel that Swadeshi Jagran Manch would actually make a comeback and sort of pour some cold water on that right-wing economic ideology. But that's not what happens. What happens is somebody else has been born 3 to 4 years back in a state called Gujarat, right? What that man brings forth into the BJP RSS ideological economic front is a new way of governance. For the first time, not even Vajpayee was able to do it with that finesse. That man was able to marry, for the first time, in a very harmonious way, a totally right-wing economic ideology with a totally fundamentalist Hindu nationalist ideology. His success within the BJP owes primarily to his great ability to marry these two things. He was the first in the BJP to demonstrate that this is possible in this way. I mean, I'm not getting into the details of it. His right-wing economic ideologies within Gujarat are well known in terms of how he freed the land market, how he sold off land to Adani's, Dani, Adani and Nathwani, as they say in Ahmedabad. And these sort of economic policies are well known. And this sort of marrying of Hindutva ideology and right-wing economics, he rode in 2012-13 into power within BJP by demonstrating them the look, I am the only person who have been able to demonstrate this. So that kind of economics and that kind of chauvinism is what he brought with him to power. But he never left his authoritarian traditions in that sense. Demonetization of 2013, which the 2016, the after effects of which we are still suffering, is an excellent example of how somebody can think that India can be taken for a ride. So I can do it in India. I can get away with it. That kind of confidence that a ruler can have is sort of threatening at one level, but also it sort of raises our responsibilities on the other hand. How to fight it? It's much more complicated now than before. So at the economic front, you see a completely different battle emerging, which is distinct from the ideological front. At the economic front, we have an ideology which is very complicated, which is not totally right-wing in that sense, but it is very distinctively right-wing. What the Indian bourgeoisie expects from him is not giving totally, but he gives some enormous exemptions in corporate tax, for example, in other taxes exemptions, for example. He allows them a free hand in a lot of other enterprises, but he's a typical populist, right-wing populist ruler who is able to run an economic policy in a particular complicated way, which we cannot quite box into this box or that box. It's a very complicated economic policy that he's running. Some of us who observe it closely can feel it. That kind of complexity, we have to grapple with that complexity and the fight at the economic front. For example, the kind of social security initiatives that he announces, and he sort of gets away with it. I've given gas to the poor, I've given light rural electrification I've done, and most of it we know are wrong. Most of it are only very partly true, but he is able to run a campaign based on the so-called success of that, and sort of people buy into it. So his economics is populist on the one hand, while very much bowing down to corporates on the other hand. So we need to get that economics right before we begin to actually fight it in some sense. So we have ideological struggle and we have economic struggle. We also have at the institutional level, we have multiple institutions in India which are under great crisis. I mean, I'm not getting into it. The biggest institution that's under crisis is the Constitution itself. The fight, as a famous Twitter activist of the Sangh actually put it, is whether we need to remove the Constitution totally and put Manusmriti in its place. Now, this is basic, but that's an overstatement, but that's exactly what they want. That's exactly the direction in which they want to push India's institutional system, constitutional system and institutional system into. We have the Supreme Court. I don't want to say much about it. We very well know the way it has decided on issues like Kashmir, on specific cases of BJP leaders versus Congress leaders and all, how decisions have been made, it's very clear. The question of RBI, the loss of institutional independence of Reserve Bank of India. I hear that another 30,000 crore is being demanded by the Finance Ministry from RBI, in addition to 1.4 lakh crore, which was 1.43 is the exact number. But I'll tell you later why 1.4. 1.4 lakh crore has already been received by them. In addition, they want another 30,000 crore. That's because they are unable to collect taxes. Their GST revenues are completely down. And this completely erodes the institutional autonomy of the RBI. And they have a yes man placed as the governor of the RBI, who is ready to do anything that the bosses in Delhi want them to do. Earlier governors were known for standing up to Delhi and saying that we will not do this. You have Central Bureau of Investigation, which less said of it, the better. You have the Parliament as an institution. The last session of the Parliament was dramatic in that the speed with which certain bills came and went, never in the history of India have such speed been there in sort of legislations coming and being passed without any debate. Kashmir debate is being held without a Kashmiri in the parliament because they are in jail in Srinagar. This kind of outright audacity to sort of take the parliament in their hand and play it the way they want is truly threatening to our constitutional polity in one level. The system of governors is completely distorted. The governors actually do what they want. Despite precedents, despite written laws, rules, they do what they want with the state governments. Election Commission of India, in fact, the BJP spokesperson gives out the election dates before the Election Commission of India announces it. That's the system that we have in India today. They give hints to the Election Commission as to what date it should be. Wait till I announce certain things. Only after that you should announce the date, the code of conduct, and so on. That's completely gone. Controller and Auditor General. It is another institution which is slowly being threatened. Some of which is coming. You have universities. JNU being an excellent example. You have a donkey as the Vice Chancellor of that university, who is basically out there to put a bomb in that institution. He has been told, destroy JNU as a university. He has been told, finish it off, and whatever it takes. And the way in which faculty recruitments are being held in JNU's, friends tell us that the lowest marked person in the interview board is in the panel of candidates is given appointment, despite he having the lowest marks, without PhD, just because he was an old ABVP leader. That's the kind of criterion that is being used to select faculty members into that august institution. We know how they treated Romila Thapar. How they treat knowledge with disgust. They treat truth with disgust. They don't like knowledge. They don't like truth. The point of the Rakhi Gadi invasions and all mentioned, they are truly, they abhor knowledge and truth. They simply can't stand it. Any kind of intelligence. And they don't have one intellectual worth the salt in their ranks. They can't appoint a good vice chancellor. They can't appoint a good UC chairman, whatever, just because they simply don't have such a man in their such a person in their ranks. They intellectuals move. Economists, demonetization showed that not one good right-wing economist, forget left-wing economist, not one good right-wing economist was with them on that. Name it. The who's who were all against it. ICHR is an excellent example to rewrite history. Yeah, it's an excellent example where they have managed to rewrite history in very, may I say, innovative ways. So institutional crisis is another level which needs to be taken up. along with ideological and economic struggles. Political struggles. And here I'm not including electoral into this, into what I call political here. The first thing that comes to my mind is the crisis of federalism in India. The rights of states in our federal system. India is a union of nationalities in that sense. India is a union of states. It's not a single centralized power. So this, for the coming in of the GST, for example, takes away the right of states to tax the way they want to. The coming in of the new finance commission, for example, they have been given a clear mandate. The 14th Finance Commission, which submitted its report the year Modi came to power, had said 42% of the revenues of the central government has to be passed on to the states. Now, the new terms of reference given to the 15th Finance Commission give them a hint that if needed, you can reduce this 42% to 35 or 38%. In other words, the new Finance Commission has been given terms of reference which makes it explicit that the amount of money that is given to the states can actually be brought down from existing 42%. That's a great threat that we have. Another great threat that we have to federalism. Kashmir issue shows that they can treat a state with contempt. It is for the first time in India's history that a state has been demoted to a union territory. In our history, we have always promoted union territories into states. For the first time in history, you have a state being demoted into union territory. Their leaders are still in jail. The imposition of Hindi, that's not why I'm not speaking in Hindi today. I can speak quite well. The imposition of Hindi as they call it the national language of India, while they don't realize India does not have a national language. India only has an official language. The official language of India is for the administrative purposes of the Union of India, which is the central government, right? And not the states. For the central government, it is the Rajbhasha, jo bolte hain. And it is added in that, or English can be used. Hindi or English can be used. So central government's communications can be in Hindi or English. States' official language is decided by the states. Marathi, Tamil, Malayalam, Telugu, Kannada, whatever it is. There is no mention of Hindi in any of these as a national language, but they want to impose it. This imposition has cultural connotations, political connotations, and religious connotations. It's very important to note that. So we have big struggles to wage at the political sphere. Scientific temper. It's very important that we don't lose sight of this. The list of idiotic statements that our Prime Minister beginning and then downwards have made is well known. There is a frustration with modernity. There is a frustration with Golwalkar. Shamsul Islam always says that of a debate between Golwalkar and Nehru. Nehru told Golwalkar that you are taking the country 1,000 years back. So Golwalkar replied, "You're wrong. I am trying to take the country 5,000 years back." Right? So this is in some sense going back to archaic, completely patriarchal, casteist traditions